Hello, welcome. My name is Lisa Abramowicz. I am co-host of Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Television in the mornings from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. local in New York. I am here with a very important interview, so I would appreciate it to get started. We have the Foreign Minister of Canada with us, Anita Anand, who has been in Parliament for a long time. She's been in Canada's government for a long time. And she is coming to Davos for the first time, I believe, at a pretty interesting moment geopolitically. I would like to start by asking you what the mood has been like in the run-up to this meeting as you have conversations with your counterparts around the world.
So it is nonstop in terms of issues that confront us, new issues that confront us every single day. Whether it is our NATO allies, and I'm sure we'll get to discussing Arctic security and Arctic sovereignty, whether it is the Indo-Pacific region. We're just back from China, for example, striking a landmark set of agreements with China for Canada. Whether it is in the Northern Hemisphere generally or the Americas, we are daily confronted with numerous challenges, and Canada's charting its own course, diversifying trade relations, making sure we double non-U.S. trade over the next 10 years, and ensuring that we stand foursquare behind our NATO allies.
So let's talk about that trip to China and Qatar. You've been on the road for about a week. In China, on Friday, Prime Minister Mark Carney came out with this statement. He said that the world has changed and that the progress made with China on the behalf of Canada sets Canada up well for the New World Order. What did he mean by New World Order?
So if I could just take that question in two parts. The first is, what did we do with China? What occasioned the Prime Minister to make a statement like that? And first and foremost, we have begun a new era of relations with China. We struck a deal which reduces tariffs on canola and seafood products, and we made sure that we're on a track for a strategic partnership covering numerous areas, including clean and conventional energy, including trade and economic relations, including safety and security, and multilateralism. So the work that we are doing bilaterally and multilaterally with China is in a new era. At the same time, Prime Minister Carney was referring to the complete rewiring and volatility that is underpinning the trade relationships and the WTO among countries. And he was clear to say, as we believe, that we have not reached that new world order. It is not defined at this moment. We are in a process of volatility where we see a reordering of international relationships and a pragmatic approach to global conflict. We see that in terms of Ukraine with the coalition of the willing and security guarantees as a prime example.
So how much is this the rest of the world moving away from the United States?
This is, as I said, a pragmatic approach to international relationships, that it is one and the same time self-interested. That is why Canada is diversifying its trade relationships. We need to ensure that we bolster and grow the domestic economy. At the same time, we will not retreat from our multilateral relationships. Canada stands for certain values, the upholding of international law, the assurance that multilaterally we are cooperative and collaborative, and at the same time pursuing the ever important growth of the domestic economy in areas where Canada is a superpower, energy being the prime example.
The deal with China included reducing tariffs on electric vehicles coming into Canada from China, and China reducing tariffs on agricultural goods going to China from Canada. How far do you expect this alliance to go? Is there more to come with respect to tariffs being pared back, closer alliances commercially?
Well, as I said, this is a new era in Canada-China relations. And what that means is that there will be growth and advancement in the relationship as we continue to pursue the strategic partnership, the new strategic partnership, I should add, that Prime Minister Carney and President Xi agreed to just a few days ago. What that means is that you are going to see continued symbiosis across issues, especially in the economic area. But let me take it back to energy. Canada is an energy superpower in both clean and conventional energy. The first shipment of LNG left Canada's west coast of British Columbia just last summer. And everywhere I go, countries are asking, how can we have more of Canada?
So much of discussions here at Davos this year have been concerning Greenland. That was not my bingo card coming into this. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, how much that sucked the oxygen out of the room for issues like Ukraine, for other types of geopolitical discussions?
Well, I was the Minister of National Defense between 2021 and 2023 in Canada. And at that time, the Arctic, and indeed Arctic security and sovereignty, was very much on our radar, and it continues to be the case with the Russian illegal invasion of Ukraine, for example, and Russian infrastructure moving further and further north. We, as an Arctic country, 70% of our coastline is interfacing with the Arctic, 40% of our territory. We have no choice but to ensure that we are bolstering our Arctic presence. We are doubling, our troop work and deployment nationally and internationally. We're going to make sure that we increase our defense spending to 5% of GDP, as NATO allies are doing. This is our promise. $80 billion was in our last budget for defense spending.
Are troops from NATO going to Greenland and going to Arctic regions in order to protect against possible incursions from China and from Russia or from the United States?
So the question of troops in Greenland seems to be so prevalent. Let me just say, NATO allies routinely do military exercises together. That's a fact. The point that I've been raising with Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, is historically NATO's gaze has been eastward, on the eastern flank. Canada's largest military operation is Operation Reassurance in Latvia, for example. But what I've been saying to Mark Rutte, including before the attention has been focused on Greenland, is that NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO needs to have a northern and western focus. This is clear. It is one of the primary reasons that NATO was founded, in my view. Canada is a founding member of NATO, and we deeply encourage a greater focus on the Arctic. And finally, I'll say I'm headed to Greenland, a trip that was planned long before the past couple of weeks' events took place. I'll be going with my Danish and, of course, Greenlandic counterparts to open formally the Canadian consulate there during the first week of February.
Are we watching the NATO alliance collapse?
Not at all. What we are watching is the focus on geographical areas that demand attention by the strongest military alliance in the world. Canada will continue to remain at the table. We are a multilateral believer. We believe in the strength of working cooperatively and collaboratively with our allies, including at NATO and other multilateral organizations. That won't change, but we're also pragmatic. And so we come to the table in order to lead, in order to ensure that the rules-based international order, although it is shifting, is extremely important for global stability.
Are you concerned that the sovereignty of Canada is being threatened by the potential threat on Greenland's sovereignty?
Canada will never be the 51st state. We will always ensure that we stand foursquare behind our NATO allies.
Is this something that would cause you to increase your defense spending further beyond 5%?
Look, we have, as I said, put down a commitment for $80 billion in defense spending, increasing our defense spending to 5% by 2035. That is a more than solid commitment and insurance that military spending in service of the protection and defense of Canada and our multilateral alliances is extremely solid.
How much of your time this Davos and just beforehand are you spending with European counterparts asking for advice on how to handle the United States?
That's an interesting question, actually. I have been on the phone in very wee hours of the morning with several of my foreign minister colleagues to discuss these types of questions. But rest assured, the focus is not only on domestic stability from the perspective of each country that I'm speaking with, but also on how we can work together. The strength of collaboration is underestimated.
Do you think that the U.S. and Canada can ever repair the relationship over time that has been pretty severely influenced over the past year?
Canada and the United States share the longest undefended border in the world, and we have had hundreds of years of cooperation and collaboration. Every relationship has its challenges, but let me say that with $300 billion of goods and services passing through the Canada-US border every day, we will always remain friends.
Just real quick, I know you have to run to a meeting. I want to ask you, the big elephant in the room is Wednesday's speech by President Donald Trump. What are you expecting to hear?
Well, my focus as the Foreign Minister of Canada is on Prime Minister Carney's speech, and so I'm really looking forward to that. And I will also say that we have indeed eyes on what leaders around the world are saying. Again, let's bring this back to Canadian values. We're doubling non-US trade in the next 10 years. We're diversifying our trading partners, China, India. We just agreed to comprehensive economic partnership agreement negotiations with India when we were at the G20, Indonesia, Mexico, South American countries, including Ecuador, whom I believe is at Davos. Listen, the work is intense, but Canada will continue to stand for Canada's interests, and that is in terms of economic success as well as the defense and security of our country.
Minister Anand, thank you so much for taking the time today. The Foreign Minister of Canada, thank you.
Thank you.